Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Bold Real Estate Investing. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with your bold host, Bill Dean. Hello, Bill Dean.
Hello, how are you this week?
I'm good. I'm feeling bold. Are you feeling bold?
Oh, yeah. The stuff we're going to be covering? Absolutely.
Oh, you better feel bold in the face of fair housing. Woo! Like, I don't know, Bill. We should dive right in. First of all, why was this on your mind? Why are we talking about fair housing?
Well, one of the lucky things for me is that as a realtor, we're expected to take continuing education courses.
Right.
Yes. But we get to choose. So there was a free, for me, class that I was able to go to. Yep. And it was 7 hours of how people get sued, what's out there to help people, what rights people have, all sorts of protections. I mean, it went into very, very in-depth. But for me, what I looked at it as is, hey, this is a free class on how not to get sued as a landlord. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you feel like most investors, or maybe most beginning investors, even have a clue about all the requirements of fair housing?
No. In fact, if I hadn't been trained the way I was, as far as I went to those classes around the country, a lot of my commercial and my apartment classes, they're like, hang on a second, just so you guys know this, even though this isn't technically in the workbook, they're like, here's some rules you need to know when you're going to be, listing 18 unit, 24, 60 unit buildings. Like, there's some steps you got to know about handicap accessibility and about you saying anything that could sound like you're belittling a possible renter or someone who has a protected class. So, so I knew a little bit. I knew enough to be aware. But this class really blew it up and locked in some hard things for it. So
7 hours, I'm sure it blew some stuff up and like looked at in-depth things.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's some people were nodding off, but they're not directly their financial future
right.
tied to it.
That's a good point. Like when you're like, oh man, I can see all the things that could like sink my ship. You sit up in your chair a little taller. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, walk us through, like, what do we need to know? How do we not get sued?
In a nutshell, fair housing just means that you have to have any of your openings for a rental open to anyone and everyone. There's no discrimination. So they have their main ones like sex, religion, age, ethnicity, families is protected. They just added your sexual orientation is now protected. But it's really like, you can't be racist.
Right.
You can't only let single 55 plus year old white men live in your basement. Like if it's an open rental unit, and I have a caveat to what I just said, but you can't say like, hey, this is great for families.
You can't even say it. It's not that somebody other than a family could rent it from you. You just can't even say in your marketing of your property, this would be great for families, even though it would be. You can't say that. That's what you're saying, right? Like,
correct.
Because the marketing of it sounds discriminatory, or sounds like you're
So it adds a complication to everything. But the cool thing about it is that we'll get to this towards the end, but there's a whole realm of opportunity and freedoms in this too. But so when this comes to, let's just start with the advertising part that we're on. You cannot say like, hey, I'm looking for, there's so many opportunities, but I mean, you just cannot say specifically what you want in that house.
Right.
So if you have a duplex and the upstairs is open, you can't be like, hey, I'm looking for a single renter, preferably male. Like, just can't say that. So I'm going to have to go at it right now, but there are exceptions.
Okay.
You are a girl. You are legally allowed to say looking for a girl roommate. That's fine.
If you're a female homeowner or a real estate investor and you're going to rent out a room, you could say, I'm looking for a female tenant or renter.
So you're protected on that front.
Okay.
When you're living with them. The other caveat to this whole thing is that if it's in a building you live in and it's 4 units or less, so if you're renting out a room in your home, it's a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, then fair housing does not apply either.
At all, or just in some instances?
At all.
Oh.
Because in essence, they're looking at it as you're allowing someone to live in your house. You're sharing the walls with them. So you can be like, yeah, no, I don't, no kids or no pets of any kind.
I feel like I just saw your entire investment strategy, Bill. Like Bill's going to have 50 fourplexes and then 1031 them into a storage unit. Big.
That is actually it. But I mean, it's just like other than those two exceptions, you can't really say anything as far as like, oh, this is a whites only, or this is for, depending on what part of the country, this is for Chinese Americans only, or whatever. You just so you have to keep it fairly generic, at least about the building itself. You can talk about the square footage, all the normal stuff we see, but you can't try to keep anyone out of it.
Got it.
So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is, as far as, if someone can look at that and be like, well, that means I can't live there, you're probably in trouble.
Right. And it's funny because I remember as a real estate agent writing marketing remarks for a property, like, and I mean, it gets into like some crazy specifics. Like you couldn't say master suite because that had some connotation to it. Like in Washington State, you couldn't say master suite. I'm like, mother-in-law space or mother-in-law apartment. Like just a lot of the things we say when we're just trying to simply describe it, is called into question because like you got to sort of leave the narrative out of it in some ways, if like the storytelling of it, right?
Yeah. So like even as an agent, I can't say this would make a great family home,
right?
Because what if a single person wants it? They want the 3-stall garage behind it.
What are some of the ramifications? Like how does like do they have like fair housing police? Do they come around and look at your marketing remarks and like, hey, you're going to jail. You just said this was like a mother-in-law apartment.
So the Department of Justice actually works with different groups throughout the country. So every state, they have a different agency that they work through. Wow. So if someone turns you in, that agency then looks right into it. Like there's no, it was a misunderstanding. If you're turned in, they're investigating.
Yeah, DOJ. Don't mess with DOJ.
So that local agency or that state agency is going to investigate it, see if it actually happened, and then you'll go to court or an arbitrator or and have to sit through arbitration or court, and they'll actually have to defend yourself. So some of the stuff like this, how this sneaks in and you won't even think about it. I had a gentleman who had 2 people apply for an apartment. Native American came in and applied, and then right behind him, a white blonde came in and applied, and she had better credit and she had a better rental history and a higher income. So they're like, absolutely, you win. Well, a Native American actually sued them because he's like, they didn't give me a fair chance. They discriminated against me because of my race and took this other gal. But they were able to prove that actually no, like statistically looking, she had better marks here, and here. So we accepted the offer.
Got it.
So that's where it happens. And that's, so what I want to actually really talk about on that front, and this is huge, is when you are opening an apartment, you have to treat all your tenants the same. So if your friend is going to live with you for 3 months and sign a lease, they have to have a background check on file. If you do background checks, if you're going to do a credit check, you have to run their credit. You have to treat everyone the same, because if you ever do get in trouble, and when it happens, they'll look at it and be like, oh, so, this guy, you didn't check anything. This girl, you didn't check anything. Well, this guy of a different color, maybe you checked, and this couple you checked. So what's going on here? Why are you, picking different things for different people? Are you stereotyping them?
Right. Interesting.
So
on the flip side of that, sorry, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
That's right.
If let's say what I really want is to have a really stringent application process, I can have that. I just have to do it for everybody.
Exactly. Okay. So it's kind of a beware for the most part, because depending on what class of rents or rental places you have, this is going to vary. But really, if they're smart about what they're doing, they can play you and sue you, and they'll always win. So you can actually discriminate based on credit. That is perfectly protected. So you can say, hey, I only want 740s and above. Okay, well, that's going to weed out a lot of issues right there.
Interesting.
And you can set up different parameters, but it's just you have to treat everyone the same. So that if one person gets the apartment and the other person is angry, they can't come back. I mean, they can still come back, try to get you in trouble and sue you, but you can just show. So like one of the ways I do it is I have a income ratio. I don't verify. It's illegal to verify where the income comes from.
Yeah.
So I don't verify that part. I just ask them to verify what they make, because I have a 40% income to rent ratio.
Got it.
I want to make sure you can afford my rent.
Yeah.
Because if you have a flat tire, you can't pay me a month's rent. Like it's not a good situation.
Right. Right.
I know you're making almost double what my rent is. We're good.
Right. Okay.
So that's the other thing to be aware. You can't say, because people get discriminated when they're Section 8 or if they're living on disability.
Right.
So yet again, I can verify that they have income coming in. I don't care where it's coming from.
Got it. And how do you verify? Do you ask for bank statements or
however they want,
or what?
However they want, really. It's just got to show that they have a job.
Yeah.
Or an income. So if they want, they can get me a blacked out bank statement just shows deposits, or they can do, most people just grab a pay stub. They don't really care because I'm not doing it maliciously.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure that I have renters that can comfortably live in my place.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Because another side of this is when it comes to handicap accessibility. So it is perfectly legal to say handicapped accessible, but it is illegal for you to say must be able to walk.
Got it.
Which might sound stupid, but you can't discriminate against anything like that.
How does that and this may not be fair housing, but where is, like, if my house doesn't have an elevator or a ramp, and I don't have to have that unless a tenant is applying. And then if a tenant applies and I can't discriminate against whatever disability they have, I have to actually make accommodations for their disability.
Reasonable accommodations that won't leave you, won't be financially detrimental to you. So yeah, this is actually in the law, but so what happens?
Fair housing? That's in fair housing, right? Okay.
Yep. So how that all works out is, if let's say you have a split entry, something where they have to go up 6 to 8 steps to get into your home.
Yep.
So I'll tell you two different ways. The way I learned was if someone rolls up and it's an upstairs unit, you can't say anything about their handicap because they could actually sue you or their disability. All you can say is, all right, I'll see you inside. And you go up the steps, open the door, walk in and wait for them.
Oh.
You haven't said anything, and if they can't make it. But if they turn around and then ask you, hey, I need assistance, then it's okay.
Got it. Okay.
So
interesting.
So you cannot bring it up or say like, oh, by the way, hey, I have this downstairs unit that's easier to get down. If you want to go there, like that would be discriminating as well. So you just
couldn't say like, hey, would you like help up these stairs? Or, hey, can I help you somehow? Or
nope.
That's so crazy, man. Like, I mean, I get it, but it's like, in some ways it's like, it causes people to not even try to help because you don't know who could feel offended or who could sue you or who's trying to
there's a good reason to have the rules, but it's just tough to use a blanket rule.
Right.
Because of course it's going to get abused both directions. But
sure.
In all reality, if someone wants to rent your place, you cannot legally stop them. They have to pay for the upgrade. So if they're going to put a ramp in, they have to pay for that. If they want a handicap accessible shower, they have to pay for that. Sometimes the landlord can pay for that. The cool thing is there's even grants out there. So you can get a grant federally or locally or from the state that actually pays for some of those conversions.
Wow.
Because what you'll find is if you have that ready, there's always a need for it. So if once you make that conversion, it's up to you, the landlord, like, hey, actually, I'm going to keep it like this because it works out.
Can you charge more for rent when it's that way? Can I raise my rates? I don't mean like if I have 2 units, this one's more and this one's not, but can I raise my rates?
After that, per se, but that's still like, if you're like, oh, you're in a wheelchair, I'm going to charge you $200 more a month.
No, but I mean, like I'm just thinking of supply and demand. If there's a low supply of handicap accessible properties, which means the demand for those properties are up, I could legitimately raise my rates to be competitive in the marketplace. No?
So that is going to depend on your state, but
okay,
you can.
Okay. All right.
You can in a way. I mean, you just can't like do it to that applicant. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to put money into this,
yeah,
and I'm going to make it handicap accessible,
right?
Absolutely, because it's a business, business decision.
Right.
So it gets, we've talked about marketing it. You have to be careful. We've talked about showing it, but even your applying process, it has to be straight across the board because they don't want anyone to feel belittled when they're applying. You don't want anyone to feel like they're being shut out.
Right.
So you just have to, be consistent is really the message.
Yeah.
And unless it's in a fourplex that you live in, you have to follow these rules. And then the cool thing with those accommodations, like if it's older than a certain year, I think it's in the 70s, you don't have to modify anything to follow the American Handicap Association standards or the ADA laws. But if it's new construction, then you do have to follow. So you will have to put ramps and, curb cutouts and different things like that.
Right.
So that's kind of a nice thing too, is just because you bought a 1968 home doesn't mean you have to make all those modifications.
Got it.
But if you are building, let's say, a new fourplex, you'd have to at least make the accommodations for, depending on the square footage, 1 or 2 parking spaces and all that fun.
I would think, what are your thoughts on this? I would think I would want some type of like attorney on retainer for any of this type of stuff. I'm getting into any of this stuff. Like, am I good? Am I covered? Am I good? Like, I wouldn't trust myself to read through all of those laws and then like feel like I'd get it right every time.
Okay. Well, that's the nice thing about it is there are groups out there that can help you with this. They're a free resource. And they love it when you say, hey, I'm doing XYZ. Can you just check over my stuff? Because they have lawyers full time that they work with. So sure. They're excited that you are being proactive. Because most times all they're getting is these phone calls. Oh, I got so mistreated, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
right.
Okay, well, you're a 420 credit score, have no proof of income and want to rent a, XYZ. Like, and then there's some times where they actually get the real phone calls where people are just like, I don't rent to XYZ, But yeah, they're literally resource groups out there for that very thing. So that's really nice. Like I know who I can call in state North Dakota, right? Not even in my city, but they can handle, this works, tweak this line, boom. You have a solid rent application, you have a great lease agreement, you're covered.
So good. I love it.
So here's one last thing I'll throw in there.
Yeah.
And it has to deal with pets. Because, we talked about kind of the different discriminations that can happen, but pets is a big thing because you can say yes or no to pets, but in the eyes of the law, an emotional support animal is not a pet. So the most abused thing we're seeing across the country is, I have an emotional support mink or parrot or cat or dog.
A mink?
Yeah, literally.
Wow.
And it's like, it says no pets, or I have a pet deposit, but when it's an emotional support animal, I cannot charge a pet deposit.
Wait. So is there a certification that happens to have the animal be classified as that, or is it just subjective?
A doctor's note.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So
unless you have a fourplex or less.
Even then.
Oh, really?
Even then.
It doesn't. Wow.
So you might be able to fight that one on the fourplex, but that's really, do you want to risk it? Do you think you could stand up? Like if you're saying, hey, I'm deathly allergic to cats, no cats of any kind, shape can be in this house, you're probably okay. But if you're just like, I don't like you and I'm just going to blame it on your cat, then, then you could be in trouble.
Interesting.
So with that, like in my state, I'm allowed to charge up to $2,500 or 2 months rent for a pet deposit. So like if I have
it's an emotional support animal.
Correct.
An emotional
so
support
normally
makes.
You can say like, hey, I allow pets, but it's, $2,000 pet deposit. The normal deposit is $500 and rent $700. I could say that.
Wow.
And people would be like, no, I'm going to go to the next place, but I allow pets, but I didn't know how to deal with the emotional support animals because I'm allergic to cats.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no matter what, when you leave, I have to have a professional company come in and clean and do all the air filters and everything, and brush out the ductwork.
Right.
So you can charge for that, which is cool. So I can't add to a deposit when it's an emotional support animal. I can't add to rent, but out of their deposit, I have to take the funds, and I have to let them know up front, like, hey, I'm allergic to cats. It's totally fine that you have it, but just so you know, and then one unit in particular, I know it's $280 to have all the ductwork cleaned. So just so you know, you have a pet, that's where it's going. That's where that deposit's going. It's not even like a profit center for me when they have a cat.
Right.
So that's one of those ones where people, they're trying to change the laws so that there's less abuse, because there's no reason there might be a reason, but for most times, at least what I've experienced, you don't need an emotional support iguana. Like
an emotional support mink.
Yeah. I mean,
amazing. No offense. If you listening to this have an emotional support mink, we are not making fun of you.
Correct. We're just saying it creates interesting things for us landlords and property owners.
That's correct.
Because at the end of the day, there's a beautiful side of this, and you can directly advertise to those groups.
Right.
So I can say, like, I have a felony friendly housing, or this is an LGBTQ.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Wait, I can say that? I can say that?
So what'd you say?
I can say that. So I can actually market to protected classes.
Yes.
I just can't discriminate against them.
Exactly.
So I could say, like, I can't say this house would be great for LGBT. I can't say that.
You could.
I could say that.
Yeah.
I can say, I can say this house would be great for a single white male, but I can say this would be great for an LGBT tenant.
Yes.
Wow, that's fascinating. Wow.
Okay. So you can't say, like, this house qualifies for Section 8.
Got it. Okay.
But you can't say, I don't take Section 8. I mean, you can, but.
Interesting. Got it. Wow. Wow, this is fascinating. What a fascinating conversation is our justice system. Wow. Got it.
So the cool thing is, you have local places in each state that can handle this. You just have to search for fair housing advocacy groups.
Got it.
Or just go on the Department of Justice and search down, and they'll have each state list out of who handles everything.
Got it.
Because the biggest thing is you just want to be safe. I mean, like I started off with, that was a 7-hour class of how not to get sued.
Right.
So I don't try to, discriminate. I didn't know about the verifying income part. I never cared what it was. I just wanted to get a number, but now I know that I can't ask where it's from, just what it is.
Yeah.
So it was very, very good. And it's not the most exciting stuff in the world, but when you start realizing that, like, in the state of North Dakota, I'm allowed to charge extra if I'm going to provide housing to felons.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group that is getting almost $1,500 a bed, and they put 2 beds in a room. They get rid of a living room, make that a bedroom. So in a 4-bed, 2-bath house, they can get about 10 people in there. They're generating $15,000 a month of revenue because they do transitional housing. So you get out of jail, you spend 6 months there, and then if you make it, boom. But, could you imagine, what could you purchase that if you could stick 2 bodies per room plus the living room counted as a room? If you buy an 8-plex, you could potentially have 70 people paying you $1,500 a month. So,
wow, those numbers are shocking numbers. Wow.
Yeah. So there's a flip side to all this too, but it's just, I wanted to bring it up because it's such an important subject that we don't think about. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I love that because it's not coming from a place of right and wrong. It's coming from a place of knowing what is so about fair housing, and then you just need to do the due diligence to go figure out what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, so that you can play by the rules. So
yep.
Good stuff, Bill.
Yeah. And an attorney can run through everything. They can look at it. I mean, and the attorneys cost some money, but these advocacy groups are free. So Just go out, make that phone call.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it.
I'm sure people will have questions as a follow-up to this. If people want to reach out to you and ask you a follow-up question, or even just work with you on their own investment goals, how do people reach you?
All right. That's BillDeanHomes.com. That's my name, BillDeanHomes.com. Mm-hmm. Click on the comments section and it'll actually send me a private email. So it won't be shared on the site and we can hook up.
Perfect. I love it. Bill, thanks for your time today. Thanks, Jen. This is fascinating. I can't wait to see what we unpack next. But until next time, Bill, take care.
All right. You too.